Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome. Really, really great to be with everyone. My name is Rachel Herzing. I am a friend of Critical Resistance and a donor to Critical Resistance, as I know many of you are, and very, very grateful to be here this evening. I want to, before I get too deep into things, pay my respects to the elders past and present of the Munsee Lenape, on whose land I'm calling from this evening. And I want to offer solidarity to those who will continue the fight for sovereignty into the future. I also want to express my gratitude to Critical Resistance for the invitation to participate in this event with people I respect so deeply. I can't not wait to hear from them. Before we get into that, you are here, from what I understand, because you're supporters of Critical Resistance. Some of you give financially, some of you give through your labor, your solidarity, or other ways. And as a donor and friend of Critical Resistance, I'm always curious to learn more about how all the various resources that get sent CR's way get put to use in the fight to abolish the prison industrial complex. So that's why we're together tonight, to talk particularly about the anti-imprisonment strain of that. But this is an opportunity for all of you to see how money, time, smarts, solidarity, or whatever you share with Critical Resistance gets put to use, both in projects and campaigns in which CR plays a direct role, but also in the work of allies that are a crucial part of the bigger movement of which Critical Resistance is a part. So as a friend of CR and a fan of the movement for prison industrial complex abolition, my thanks to all of you who are here for making this work possible. So here's how things are going to go down this evening. First, we're going to hear directly from Sharlyn, Nick, and Laura about work against imprisonment in which they're involved. They are also going to introduce themselves to you so that I don't mess that up and talk about things from 50 years ago. They'll have some time to be in discussion with each other after the last speaker makes their presentation. And then, depending on time and everything, we'll open up for conversation with all of you. Speakers, just a reminder that if you go over the time that we all agreed to, I'm going to interrupt you. Obviously, I mean no disrespect in doing that, but I want us to keep attuned to the agreements we made with each other. So that's what's going to happen. And I could not be more pleased to begin our conversation this evening with Sharlyn Grace. So last year, the Community Justice Exchange and Critical Resistance collaborated on a document called On the Road to Freedom that many of you may have seen. And it's a resource that's aimed at helping organizers assess ways of fighting for relief from the harms related to pretrial penalties and money bail. And so Sharlyn, get us into it. Tell us all about it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rachel. And thanks, everyone, for being here. I'm really excited for this conversation and to learn from people I admire and respect so much. And I'm excited that we're having an international abolitionist conversation. As Rachel said, my name's Sharlyn. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm here tonight on behalf of Community Justice Exchange to talk about the On the Road to Freedom assessment or toolkit. I'm based in Chicago, and my background is, the relevant part of my background is that I've done legal support work for organizing against police violence since around 2013, supporting abolitionist movements, mostly here in Chicago, and learning a lot from Critical Resistance members here and around the country. And I came to this work on pretrial reforms and ending money bail and ultimately ending pretrial incarceration, the goal through that legal support work. I was a founding member of Chicago Community Bond Fund in 2014 and 2015 and a part of the Coalition to End Money Bond here. And also for a long time, no longer, but for a long time, a proud part of the National Bail Fund Network. And the project that I want to talk about is this toolkit, this resource for organizers primarily, also a resource for curious policy advocates, people who are in formal policy spaces and are trying to learn from the movement that has grown up and become really strong in the last 7 or so years, this movement for pretrial freedom. So the issue that our toolkit, the road to freedom, on the road to freedom addresses is pretrial incarceration and supervision, pretrial surveillance. This is something that people are very familiar with, I imagine, this audience. There are 630,000 people in jails on any given day in the United States. Those people are overwhelmingly awaiting trial, nearly 500,000 people on any given day. And they're mostly there because they can't afford to pay a money bill, but also there for a variety of other reasons, including all the overlap with systems of parole and probation and other kinds of surveillance that I know we're going to talk about tonight. The other thing that I want to say about jail, because I think it's really important when we think about reducing the scope and impact of the criminal legal system on the people and communities that are targeted by it, is that because many people stay in jails for shorter amounts of time, when we just think about the 600,000 people in jail on any given day, that actually is an underestimate, or it doesn't give us the full idea of actually how many people are being incarcerated in jails every year. And there are actually about 10 million people admitted to jail every year. And because some people may stay for only a couple days or a couple weeks, not to minimize that time, but it means that we don't capture the full scope of how much violence the system is doing. And there's also this really intense connection to when people are incarcerated while awaiting trial to all the other parts of the system and the reach of the system. So when people are jailed, they're more likely to be found guilty. They're more likely to be given a sentence of incarceration. They receive longer sentences of incarceration compared to people who are free. And so it sends people deeper into these systems and is part of the sort of compounding harm. And what I want to say about our toolkit is, as Rachel said, that it's really for organizers who are trying to develop campaign demands and advance the cause of prison industrial complex abolition. Jess, would you mind sharing my first slide? I have a couple slides from taken from our toolkit just to help us look at the questions being asked. Here we go. Thank you. And so what the toolkit tries to do is to offer public conversation in this really active movement debate. This is a huge area of reform. There are policy wins. We evaluate a bunch of them in the toolkit. And there's also a lot of co-optation. There's a lot of adoption of progressive or even abolitionist language by system actors, by the jailers themselves, by prosecutors, by people who are responsible for building these systems of mass caging. And so we're really trying to contribute very concretely to this question of what is a reformist reform and what is a non-reformist reform or an abolitionist step, and how are we distinguishing those things in this very active, very sort of well-funded landscape of pretrial reform around the country. And so Community Justice Exchange and Critical Resistance generated these 4 questions to ask ourselves. We offer these as questions. They should look familiar for people who are used to relying on critical resistance and the amazing resources that CR generates. So the first question, when evaluating reforms and thinking about our own demands, so organizers who are using the toolkit can use this to evaluate proposals that are coming from other people. And we can also use it to evaluate proposals that we're developing or demands that we're developing in our own campaigns. So the first question that we offer in the toolkit is, does the reform weaken the system's power or means to jail, surveil, monitor, control, or otherwise punish people? And part of what we're trying to convey in this question is that these things, all these negative verbs, these negative words for what the criminal legal system does or the criminal punishment system does, this is what the system does, right? We're trying to take a really critical eye to the carceral humanism, to that many people are trying to use to justify expansion. So they'll say, we'll let people out of jail, but then we're gonna, mandate them to treatment, or we're gonna force them into other conditions. So really thinking about not just getting people out of jail, but getting people free. And the second question is, does the reform challenge the size, scope, resources, or funding of the prison industrial complex? The third question is, does the reform maintain protections for everyone and resist dividing people into categories of deserving and undeserving, which we know is really important, that we're not leaving people behind. We're not making the situation worse or condemning other people, even as we might get some people free, which is a classic component of liberal criminal legal system reforms. And along with that, does the reform maintain or expand existing paths to freedom for all people? Because as we evaluate policy changes, which is really what the toolkit does, we know that traditionally many policies do both at the same time, right? You can get something good out of a legislature or a city council, but it's paired with something bad, right? You get a little bit more freedom for some group of people, but at the same time, to balance it, what many politicians would propose would be to increase the penalty for someone else. And that fourth question is, does the reform shrink parts of the prison industrial complex, industries that profit from the prison industrial complex, and or the power of elected officials who sustain the PIC? And part of that is also this question to help us think about the strength and power of our movements. So we are focused on the policy reforms in evaluating different examples in this toolkit as we do. But we also want to think about how the campaign works and the state of our movement at the end of one of these campaigns, right? Are we stronger? Are our relationships stronger? Are we in a better position to win more in the future? Because the thing about all of the reforms that we discuss, the ones that we concluded were abolitionists, the ones that we concluded were reformist, is that there will be more in the future. I apologize, everyone. My light is on a timer. So nothing is wrong when the light goes off. I just have to move a little bit more. Jess, could you go to that second slide? And I will find a resource and drop a resource about carceral humanism in the chat, because I know that's something we can all benefit from thinking about. James Kilgore, based here in Central Illinois, is someone who I've learned a lot about that from. Okay, and so this spectrum is one of the resources that we created on the Road to Freedom. And one thing about the landscape for people demanding an end to money bail, for people demanding pretrial freedom, is that it's a really complicated space. And a lot of times there are many different components, many different changes being proposed at the same time. And the spectrum was our attempt in the toolkit. There's an explanation of all of these things. And there's also a glossary. So there's also a bit of that important work of translating legalese into something that's accessible for people without specific training and background. This guide is available in English and Spanish. We'll drop the links to both of those. And I think the thing that I want to say, one of our questions was what we're most proud of and excited about the projects we're talking about. And I think when I think about this toolkit, what I am most excited about is the way that it really grounds us in abolition and in people's freedom and in a long-term vision. Because there were many decades where there were conversations about money bail and pretrial freedom, and those conversations were led by, national nonprofits that did technical assistance with sheriffs and judges, and it was really focused on the inside. And I think we've moved hugely in such a short amount of time, right? A great example of this is risk assessment tools. Like 6 years ago, every conversation was like, if we get rid of money bail, we'll use risk assessment tools. And what happened was that organizers and people with critical understandings of racial justice and the way that algorithms and the use of data that reflected the criminal legal system's bias was being laundered to then predict the way that the court system would respond to people in the future, because that's what risk assessments do. There was a really critical eye turned to that. And now the conversation is completely different. And there are, it's completely transformed what is possible in a short amount of time, at the same time that there were protests in the street, that there were, the Black Lives Matter movement made that possible. And then last summer also, or not last summer, but summer 2020, the uprisings of summer 2020 really shifted the landscape for what we're talking about. And I think oftentimes people don't always see the connection between someone who is lobbying an elected official for a policy change and the dynamics in street protests. And I think this is a space where we see them really, really clearly, and we can understand that those things are related and connected, and that we need confrontational grassroots and just protest on top of everything else we might be working on. And I think I will wrap up there and look forward to hearing from Nick and Laura.
Thank you so much, Sharlyn. That was fantastic. And thank you, Sharlyn, also for the leadership that you have shown and others at the Chicago Community Bail Fund have shown in demonstrating how the fight for bail, for the elimination of money bail, is a piece of this broader abolitionist movement. I think you all have made a very clear case for that over the years. And this tool is a lovely addition from Community Justice Exchange and Critical Resistance. So thank you so much for that. Critical Resistance has, as you all know, spent the bulk of its life fighting prisons. And apparently it continues to do that. Nick DeRenzi here is going to join us from Critical Resistance Oakland. And Critical Resistance Oakland has joined other members of Californians United for a Responsible Budget, or CURB, in making a commitment to try to close 10 prisons in the state of California by 2025. So Nick, can you tell us more about this campaign and what's going on with it?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Nick DeRenzi. I'm a member of Critical Resistance's Oakland chapter, and I'm calling in from unceded Ohlone territory, also known as San Francisco, California. And like Rachel had said, I will be here talking about the California Prison Closure Campaign with the Californians United for Responsible Budget Coalition. So our campaign is a campaign to reduce the number of prisons in California through prison closure, which will ultimately help get people out of prisons. The reason we're doing this is nationally, the prison industrial complex expanded with the prison construction boom, which took place in the 1980s and the 90s and the 2000s, with California being a case study. So for the first time now, we are seeing an opportunity to challenge prisons and to make significant gains against the trend of prison construction here in California. In order to keep making progress against the prison expansion and to keep reducing the number of people inside and the money the state spends on imprisonment, CURB had assessed that we needed to proactively take up the fight to close prisons here in California. Recently, the Legislative Analyst Office, which is a body of the state, the Legislative Analyst Office is a body that's in charge of the state's financial responsibility. And it did an assessment, and they reported that it would be feasible, and they recommended for the state to close 5 prisons. So this is that opportunity that we saw that, like, oh, if the state's talking about it, then we really need to be jumping into this. They looked at the government's analysis, and we looked at the government's analysis and their prison closure plans. And that's when we decided we wanted to push even more, which Rachel had talked about in us pushing to close 10 prisons. Recently, we've had 2 big wins, 2 closures, 1 prison closure in Tracy, and then 1 slated for Susanville. And this is really, really big because this is the first prison. The one in Tracy is the first prison fully shut down in almost 20 years. The last prison that was shut down in California was in 2003. So for how we're going about this campaign is, there's a lot of different things going into it, definitely since it's a statewide campaign. And we have Curb, luckily, who's helping us with really driving the whole coalition. And anyways, so we are working to target the governor, of course, and that's Gavin Newsom at the moment, because he has the power to close prisons and to set the direction of the state's prison closure agenda. The governor's office also plays a big role in constructing the budget and approving the budget, which we know right now California is investing and has been investing so much in the prison industrial complex. We're also targeting the state legislature who passes the budget. We're working with some decision makers and legislators who are sympathetic, but we're also targeting in the legislature to create pressure to compel closure and to make it politically unviable for them to continue to invest in the prison industrial complex. Also in our budget strategy, we're also aiming to gut the California Department of Corrections budget, because by taking away their money and taking away their resources, we're taking away their power to cage and surveil people. So for our base of support through this campaign, the prison closure campaign aims to benefit directly people who are impacted by the prison industrial complex. So people who are inside with our advocacy for closure, for releases, for mass releases, and by reducing the state's capacity to cage people through prison closures. So every prison that's closed, that's less capacity for the state to lock people up. We believe that closing prisons genuinely benefits everyone. And we mean everyone all throughout California. We are looking to build with labor because prisons don't deliver the job opportunities and gains that they promised. We are looking to build with environmental groups because we know that prisons are environmentally and socially toxic and polluting. We're looking to build with Indigenous groups because prisons are built on Indigenous land and should be returned to their sovereign nations. And most broadly, we want to build with all sectors in prison towns and across the state because we believe everyone will benefit from the closing of prisons and the reinvestment in life-affirming resources. We don't want to save the state money. That's the state's lens of they want to close more prisons because they're spending all this money. We don't want to save that money. We don't want to go back into their coffers. We want them to now take that money and spend it in communities that have been most harmed by the prison industrial complex. So we want an investment in the people. So looking forward and also, thinking historically of where we are, this work in the campaign is really, really exciting for me and for Critical Resistance and for everyone involved, because we're really building on decades of work that has gotten us to a moment of actually being able to push for physical prison closures. The opportunity is here and we have to grasp it and hit the ground running. And if California could be a case study for prison construction, then we can be a case study for prison closures. So we need to fight here, fight now, and fight hard so we can start to close prisons all throughout the nation and then keep on pushing internationally as well. Jess, could you put the slides on now? We're going to show you cool slides, couple just to wrap up here. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jess. And so here is our first slide. So I just wanted to show you a couple of things that have come out of the prison closure campaign so far. So on the left is the cover of the People's Plan for Prison Closure. This was put out by the Californians United for Responsible Budget, or CURB, and it lays out the People's Plan for why we need to have prison closures, talking about reinvestment, talking about which prisons need to be closed. It was coordinated between people on the inside and outside, families and communities. So, everybody's really part of it to really show what we need to do and not let the state be the one who decides what happens and who gets to come out. And we'll also be dropping links to this as well. And then on the right side is a really awesome poster that I was able to create with one of our other Critical Resistance Oakland members, Sarah. And it's a really awesome graphic that we made that has actually been used already in the campaign. I think we made it, and then the next day it was already being used. And we've done also cool screen printing of it as well. but really draws on a lot of the visual impacts that critical resistance tries to uphold of, not showing people in cages, not showing prisons, not showing like guards. Like it's really visually like we're breaking apart these bars and we're wanting to build something new, letting it grow, letting it flourish. So that's really like the visual impact of that poster that we have there. Next slide, please. And then here is just some next steps for getting involved with our prison closure campaign. You can follow us on Instagram at Critical Resistance, and then there's also at Curb Prisons. So we'd be posting a lot of our media on there, calls to actions. You can see different events that'll be coming up. Next year, we're definitely gearing up to work to go out more in a safe way. We're still in the midst of a pandemic, but we really want to get out into these communities and get to talk to people and really, understand what these communities need to flourish, what they need to be able to, roll back the prison industrial complex and really give them life-affirming resources. And then we also have a couple different forms you can fill out. If you know anyone in the Central Valley or a prison town or inside California cages, definitely get in contact with us so we can start to build with you. We can get you more involved and plugged in different ways. And there's also going to be a link dropped in that's some media that was made, an op-ed video of Graham, who is part of the CURB Coalition, talking about why we need to be shutting down prisons in California. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for this portion, but I'm excited to get into conversation and to hear from Laura next.
Thank you so much, Nick. And thank you for your continued work. I know that you are also a jail fighter and you are part of the crew that successfully got them to shut down jail in San Francisco and avoid building a new one. So that work is continuing. Thank you for taking your labor across the whole state. And I want to just do a quick plug because that poster that you made, I believe you made with the Center for Political Education and Dignidad Rebelde and the posters for the People class. And I just want to give a shout to both of those groups for their labor and helping make really, really powerful images for everybody to use in their campaigns. So next up, we're going to hear from Laura Whitehorn. Laura, I met in the very earliest days of my participation in critical resistance. And she and I worked together on a conference that was held in, what year was that, Laura? 2001 in California, not in California, in New York, the Critical Resistance East. And I have been so pleased to know Laura since that time. And you do work I respect so much. This past year has been a kind of an exciting year for prison releases, honestly. We've seen some people leave prison who I thought may never get out of a cage, and people who have done really excessive sentences. I mean, all the sentences are bad, but people spend more than 40, more than 50 years inside. We've seen get out just in the past month. And I know that Release Aging People in Prison, RAPP, the group that you work with, is on the leading edge of really fighting for long-termers, lifers, and people who are aging inside of cages. And so I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about that work with all of us.
I'd love to, and I am really happy and honored to be here. And I am speaking from Lenni Lenape land over the Mahicantuck River, all colonized as New York City and the Hudson River. And I just want to challenge all of us to, once we recognize the indigenous land that is stolen, that we're living on, to interpret our approach to abolition from the context of that we live in under white settler colonialism, and that defines the history. So my name is Laura Whitehorn. I use she, her pronouns. I spent a little more than 14 years in federal prison, and I co-founded Release Aging People in Prison, or the RAPP campaign, in about 2013 with two other formerly incarcerated people. Before we founded RAPP, most of my work, and work since the 60s and 70s, was geared largely toward finding freedom for political prisoners, especially those from the Black Liberation Movement, who had already by then served years and years in prison and now have served, as Rachel just said, 40 and 50 years. So a pitch, time for a little action here. Jess, could you please drop in the chat the petition link to sign for Sundiata Acoli, an 84-year-old former Black Panther who's in his 48th year of incarceration in New Jersey's jurisdiction. And then one, and please everyone sign it. If you've already signed it, get your family and other people to sign it. And also please now sign the petition for Dr. Mutulu Shakur. And I know that Critical Resistance has been circulating that petition already, who's 70 years old, and both Mutulu and Sundiata are very ill. Mutulu suffering with terrible cancer. And please seek out and support campaigns for all the other political prisoners, including those of the last few years, the water protectors, the pipeline disruptors, the Black Lives Matters protesters. And as a movement for freedom, we need to free our comrades. So RAPP is a multi-generational grassroots project. I'm going to describe it a little bit for people because I think there's people here who haven't heard, who don't know us. And it's created and led by incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people and our families. We began it in about 2013 because we saw around the country that most groups that were dealing with mass incarceration, when people were just noticing that there were more than 2 million people locked up in this country, were mostly focusing on low-level nonviolent cases and did not include people convicted of violence. And in New York State alone, that's about 2/3 of incarcerated people. In New York State, that kind of reforms that came out of that approach of nonviolent low level, things like the drug laws, reforms to the drug laws, had reduced the prison population in New York State by about 30% since 2000. But the older population in prison, people over 50, had doubled at the same time. And we knew that with that approach, we would continue having a racist punishment system that would hold more and more aging people, and it would not challenge the basic fundamental criminalization of people of color, especially of Black people, and the promotion of images of violence as endemic to Black people and other people of color. So our core value from the beginning has been no exclusions. And Jose Saldana, my dear comrade and the current leader of RAPP, says very often that Black and Brown and Indigenous people have been excluded from every democratic right and benefit in the history of the United States. And why would we want to build a movement that repeats that exclusion? So during our early years, we focused on changing the narrative associated with who's aging in prison, why are they aging, life sentences, violent crime, and parole. And all around the country, people were talking about the rise in the skyrocketing population of elders behind bars. But we were the only ones at that point saying, well, don't build prison nursing homes, don't put in handrails in prisons, release the elders. And in New York State, there were 3 ways that could happen: parole, clemency, and compassionate release, which I hope everyone on this call recognizes. Around the country, compassionate release is basically bullshit because you have to be just about dying. And then even then, if you have a high profile case, you're mostly not going to be released. So we began by organizing to force the parole board itself to change its regulations. And we forced the governor and the parole board to get rid of some of the worst commissioners and bring on some better commissioners. Because at that point, the parole board commissioners were mostly from law enforcement, mostly white, conservative. And the rate of release of parole at that point was under 20%. So our organizing was effective, and twice the regulations were changed a bit to allow for more release, and twice some better commissioners were appointed and some of the worst were removed. We did everything. We went to every community, we issued reports, we convened roundtables, we met with community groups, and we began building a community base of power. We worked very closely with groups advocating for freedom for political prisoners and with our sister group in New York, the Parole Preparation Project, as well as with the Halt Solitary campaign. And I know that Victor Pate is here from the Halt Solitary campaign. And I mention those groups because another reason we began RAPP was to try to win the release of political prisoners. And we had been trying many different strategies, and we understood that mass incarceration itself is a form of repression, is a form of anti-radical repression to try to prevent any kind of resistance from emerging such as what existed in the 60s and 70s, by weakening and destroying the very communities that could pose resistance. And so we knew that the cause of releasing political prisoners is fundamental to any real strategy to end incarceration. And of the high-profile political cases in New York State prisons at the time we started, which I think there were 6, every one of them has now been released. I tear up when I say it, largely because of the coordinated work of RAPP and all those other groups. And the political prisoners in New York were so widely loved by everyone else who had ever been in prison in New York that we had a lot of people working on this issue. And we work consistently to encourage other advocates to refuse to exclude people convicted of violence crimes from their advocacy and to reject the easy win of reforms that actually solidify the system, just what everyone has been talking about. And one example that we faced was when the death penalty was banned, New York State life without parole replaced it, creating the new death penalty, death by incarceration. Looks more humane, but it's not. And it extends the life of the prison. So we have taken on, because we were fighting for the people who are the most vilified, the most high profile, we took on to wage a campaign around the country with other advocates to try to avoid and stand strong against the temptation of an easy win that leaves so many people behind. So over the last year, we've seen really enormous gains. Now that the Democrats and some progressive Democrats dominate the legislature and the executive in New York State, and so there's pressure on the new governor from the left, there's a real possibility of changing the structures of prison and policing. And one example is that after, I don't know, Victor, I think it was almost 10 years of work, the halt solitary bill was finally passed at the end of the session this year. And that was a victory. And now we're all working to get it in New York City as well. And in January of this year, we launched the People's Campaign for Parole Justice with a steering committee of 16 groups, including several representing crime survivors, and more than 325 other organizations around the state endorsing, with a platform of 3 initiatives: elder parole, which would end life without parole and virtual life sentences by mandating that anyone who's 55 or older and has served 15 years gets to go for parole no matter the original sentence. Fair and timely parole, which totally changes the language of the parole statute in New York State and mandates that people be released unless there's convincing current evidence of danger and that they'll break the law, that won't be, and they should not be released because of that, as opposed to right now where you only have released if you can convince them that you're, Mother Teresa. Both of those bills were written by us and other incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people. And we demand that the parole board be fully staffed with commissioners from backgrounds and beliefs who will forgive and not be based in revenge. And we're also part of some new New York State coalitions, the Justice Roadmap, the Communities Not Cages, which have slates of initiatives to decarcerate prisons and immigration detention. And I believe that through our insistence on no exclusions, we have made a lot of those bills more radical and less limited. So CR asked me specifically to talk some about the lessons from the release, especially of the last of the New York State political prisoners from the 60s and 70s, our comrade David Gilbert, a white anti-imperialist who did 40 years in prison, and he's a year older than I am, so he's 77. And that was accomplished through a lot of work to force the governor, then Cuomo, to grant clemencies and then to push the parole board to release people based on who they are now, not the crime they were convicted of, and to resist the pressure of the law enforcement organizations, which have lobbied so hard against the release, not only of our political prisoners in New York, but of anyone convicted of any kind of injury to a cop. And significantly, it wasn't only David. When Governor Cuomo was forced out of office, he released several of RAPP's other incarcerated members, all of whom were convicted of violent crimes as well. And that's unusual. even during COVID around the country, governors released people. They would refuse to release the most vulnerable, the elders, because those were the people with violent crimes. They would release people with nonviolent crimes in most cases, not everywhere. And a lesson I draw from all this and from our work in general is first that I think we have to analyze the conditions and the systems in our locale, where we are in our state or wherever, to figure out how decarceration can be achieved and to figure out how historically the situation in our prisons came to be. And then which systems are most vulnerable to what kind of pressure? What happens if we win one demand? Will it create actual openings or will it be shut down immediately? It's crucially important to put at the fore not only the voices and the stories, but the expertise of directly affected people. And I get so tired of panels where formerly incarcerated people are supposed to tell our stories, and then the mic gets passed to an academic or a lawyer to explain the system and what to do about it, because we're the ones who know, and to do what it takes to develop their leadership, especially to do the hard work of organizing on and on down on the ground, and to hold fast to values and the lessons of history. The success of our work to free New York's political prisoners, not just David, but other dear comrades, including but not limited to Herman Bell and Jalil Muntakim, is one of the things that give me the most joy about this work. So in this last period, what else has been a real advance, and I think a positive sign, is that our numbers have grown. Our organizing is on the ground job of base building. That's what we do. We're out there, we do door knocking. We knocked on 2,000 doors around New York State over the last few months and organized new people who are now part of our campaign. And RAPP has full-time organizers now all around the state, in Western New York, in Albany, in Westchester, in Long Island. And most important, we have a growing cadre of community leaders. And those are family members of people in prison who will die in prison if we don't win this struggle. And the community leaders largely are individuals who were isolated before they met us, before we went into their community and went to the coffee shop and met them. They had no connection with each other or with advocacy until we connected with them. And through the advocacy, they have become powerful and inspiring leaders in the movement to end the racist punishment system. And I would say for all of us, we're not trying to build organizations, we're trying to build a movement. So critical resistance began, one of the first conferences was while I was still in prison. And I've been so excited to be part of and to see the enormous growth of abolition since then. And I think, to put it in a word, RAPP is trying to put abolition into practice on the ground by fundamentally changing the actual structures of racist power and building to replace systems of state violence with community-based justice systems. So please check out our 3 websites, rappcampaign.com, NewYorkersForClemency.com, and ParoleJusticeNY.com, and join our mailing lists and our advocacy work. And please don't hesitate to take advantage of the donate button on our website. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion because, Sharlyn, I looked at the toolkit, and that's how we decide how to construct our bills. That's how we wrote our bills, was what would they do. So I think this is going to be a great discussion, and I'm so glad to be here and to celebrate the gains that this movement has won.
Thank you so much, Laura. And it is always so refreshing and so energizing to be in the presence of a seasoned organizer who knows what the hell is up. And I'm always glad to be with you, period, Laura, but to be schooled on kind of just what the basics are of getting the work done. I feel like you helped so many of us really understand that tonight. And I feel like RAPP is setting such an amazing example for how to get things done in New York State that then can be used across the country, as you say, taking into consideration the conditions place to place. So I'm really, really grateful for all the work that you've put in and everybody at RAPP. So I want to open things up to our speakers. And for those of you who are anxiously awaiting in the wings here, if you have questions or comments, please put those either in the Q&A function, or go ahead and put them in chat. We certainly probably are not going to get to everything, but we'll do our best to incorporate some of that stuff into the conversation as we go. So Sharlyn, Nick, Laura, you all heard each other just now. I wonder if you all have things that you'd like to share with each other, questions for each other, things you'd like to share. I know there are some things on my mind too. Maybe we'll just go round robin the way that we started. Sharlyn, do you have anything on your mind you want to share?
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about, particularly for your work, Laura, but really could be for all of us, is how we respond to the criminal legal system and the media and the politicians' obsession with risk and the concept of risk. And I think for a lot of us, we're trying to resist it on this global scale or on the level of policymaking and rejecting risk assessments. But I think parole is like a really interesting and challenging space for that. Like, I've actually represented a couple people in parole hearings who had been in for many decades, and older people are, very low risk according to the metrics of the system itself. And it's so tempting to lean into that advocacy and to get people out in that way. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about like how you manage that, and how you navigate that tricky world. That we're always being requested to talk about that.
It is hard, and it is. We in the beginning, we would hear people saying it in a way that we would say, "Wait a second! If you're saying these are the lowest risk, compared to whom? Who are you saying is higher risk?" So, in the beginning, actually, Mujahid Farid, who I loved so much, and died 3 years ago. An example of what happens to people in prison, and they get out and they die way too young. We were on the train going home one night, and he said, we just started RAPP. He said, we need a catchy slogan. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, like if it doesn't fit, you must acquit, from the O.J. Simpson trial. And I just popped out with, if the risk is low, let them go. By which we meant everyone. People don't pose a risk to public safety. The cops, we have to deal with damage. There is violence in communities. And Jose talks about this all the time, and I really appreciate it, that we can't lie and we can't say that there is no crime and there is no violence and there is no interpersonal violence and intimate partner violence, but the prisons policing make them worse and aren't the route to a solution. There are other solutions, but we meant it, mostly as the risk is low. You're saying it's a risk. It's not a risk. But we realized after a few years that it sounded like we were saying exactly what you're talking about. So what we've tried, and there was a struggle in the beginning of RAPP. One person, not one of the three who started it, but someone who supported our work a lot and helped us, said we should show that people are broken down and they're so sick and they're in wheelchairs, and whom could they hurt and stuff like that. And we said, no, we want to show people who are an asset to the community, that if you open up the prison, like Ho Chi Minh said, open up the prison gates, the real dragon will fly out. There are people who will build up the community. So we try to stay away from that. And we say, and David Gilbert was the one who said to me way in the beginning, you have to show that we are the voice of public safety, because we're talking about safety of communities, not safety of white people against people of color, and not safety of property against people who don't have any, who have no money. So we try, but it really, all of this, that all of this is really a struggle, because people also say to us, well, show how much money it would save, which we do. It would, but that's not the answer. We don't want justice because it's cheap, So, and I think we need to be constantly looking at how we do, but I'm not sure if that totally answered your question. We also show that the people who get out are doing amazing things, and we show who they are, and that breaks down. That's why we started with aging, people that murderer, rapist, long-termer, person with long sentence, we show the person and people go, oh, that looks like my father, that looks like my neighbor. So tear away some of the myths.
Yeah, Nick, you also raised some of those issues that Laura was just speaking on. Do you want to talk about that in relationship to the campaign in California? How are you all dealing with risk? How are you all dealing with how you're picking the prisons for closure, and how are you thinking about kind of the non-exclusionary approach that Laura was talking about?
Yeah, thanks for posing that. For us, definitely in thinking, so, the state was in their prison closure campaign, they were thinking fiscally, which ones are breaking down, where are we wasting money, things like that. But through the prison closure report, which you'll see in the chat, and if you open it up, the conversations we had with family members, people inside, with communities, was around figuring out prison closure on a couple different points, which was, the safety of the prison, how far away, which, I mean, prison cages aren't safe in general, but I mean, thinking in terms of like the ones that are like really breaking down, that really have like, safety issues. And then thinking about also the distance from families, how far away they are, because a lot of these prisons are put significantly far away from where people are coming, where they're being jailed from in communities. And then also thinking about just all of the different, factors that go into like how they've decided which prisons like are going where. So we're for our thinking around it is, and through CURB is really like, the one, I don't want to say like us and thinking about just CR, but this is like the Californians United for Responsible Budget. Very much not thinking about like disposability or of like who of the, sorry, it's escaping me at the moment, the violent versus nonviolent and things like that. It's very much about like, we want to center families, people are inside, what they see and what they feel is going to be what prisons should be closed, and with the end goal of them all being closed. We're not saying like, oh, we need to close down these 10, 15, or 20 and we'll be fine. We want them all gone. Each one is causing harm. Each one is taking people away from their community. Each one is taking the capacity away from communities to fight back against white supremacy, against the colonial state. And so we're continuing to like push that line when we're talking to communities, when we're talking to people, and very much thinking about like also, a huge thing that's been coming up, not as a problem, but as a something we need to get past, is the jobs question. A lot of these communities, even you go in there and talk to them, they're not excited about having a prison. It's just, this is what we have jobs wise. If you take this away, our town will die. And so that is very much getting past the idea of like, no, this is not a good job. This is not, a job that is worthy of like, existing, and that there's so many other things that could be going into your town, because a lot of times these spaces were, farming communities, or they were, agricultural centers where people were, growing things, but the land has, not been taken care of. The land isn't able to be fertile, or the fact that it was sold off and the state decided to build a prison there. So it's very much of like reframing and reminding the history of like why the prisons were being built, which was, the excess labor that was happening around, the different financial crises that had been happening, and, giving people the idea of like, we need to dream big. We need to think beyond like what we see right now in front of us and what we've known, and know that there is like a different future that can be. Because prisons, jails, policing, they weren't always here. They were brought here by the settler colonial state. And so we must fight to be good, not go back to like a past, but to fight for a new future that can exist, because there was a time when these things weren't here. And so it's very much, getting through to people and letting them see like, oh, what in your community isn't being funded? Are your schools falling apart? Are your roads falling apart? Do you not have safe drinking water? Why is that? The state seems to be fine with just continuing to just splurge money into the prison industrial complex. So how can we continue to show them that it's in their interest to, take all that out and to build up new things? So yeah, I don't know if that really got to the core of the question, but yeah, thank you.
Nick. Laura, something on your mind that you want to ask Nick or Sharlyn?
That makes me think of something I've been thinking about and that we face in our work, and I'd love to know from both of you what you think about this. So I feel as if, I don't know, Rachel, you didn't mention also we were on this amazing delegation together to Palestine. And we talked a lot there about the role of sort of neoliberalism and how when revolutionary movements are suppressed or are, repressed, that seemingly kinder, gentler avenues get posed as the way to get to justice. So, and I think that that's something that you talked about, Sharlyn, in your presentation too. Is like, how do we, given that we don't have in place really solid everywhere restorative justice and all the kinds of community controlled things that we need in order to have community health. We have a public health strategy with RAPP, and we talk about public health is public safety. That's what we mean by public safety. But okay, without all of that, how in your work do you face the tendency, this, what was it, carceral humanism, the tendency of the state to control things? Because, it's sort of like you say, defund the police, and people say, oh yes, they should be doing basically the job of social workers instead of shooting people. No, we don't want the police doing things. So how do we face that in our work in this juncture in history? Do you have concrete ways that you've dealt with that?
I mean, I think this is like the $1 million question, Lauren. I think I got to be part of a conversation that I think I saw Dylan Rodriguez in the chat that Dylan, I think, presented on, was a part of too, with some other people that Interrupting Criminalization organized, where it was really about like, what's the role of the state in abolition? And there are these, like, for decades, our movement has been having this conversation about whether or not we should be calling on the government to provide more positive things to meet our needs, or whether or not we should be building the alternatives. And obviously we're lucky that people have pursued both those paths simultaneously, and that we should continue to be doing that. And I think it's a really active conversation in our organizing efforts and our advocacy efforts and our demands right now, right? I think we're all very clear, we're crystal clear that we don't want law enforcement, we don't want cops, we don't want prisons to be recasting themselves as service providers. But I think when you get, what's the role of the Department of Health and Human Services? And we all know that many service providers can be punitive, can be carceral, can be controlling, either in their own right or because they're linked up with these systems that are controlling and white supremacists at their core. And so, and then we run straight into this question of privatization and wages, right? We're in a very strong union environment in Chicago and in Illinois. And when we talk about building up community resources, those are low wage workers. That's private resources that we're developing. And I think, we haven't, I have no answer. I have lots of questions and lots of challenges, and would love to hear other people respond to that.
Nick, do you have comment on that? Laura, do you have an answer to your own question?
No, I think it's also, for me, it's wrapped up with, sometimes I feel like when we look at, reforms, sometimes the reforms themselves have within them the danger. There's a big struggle in New York City around closed Rikers, and do we open 6 new, friendly, lovely community jails? I mean, but other times, and I think this was true, I think HALT has been really smart about this with bail reform. People were a little less prepared. There's always going to be pushback. There are always going to be, first of all, the stories about, because of bail reform, someone got killed, right? Bullshit. But there's always also going to be pushback to undo the changes, or to make them work against people. And so that sense, one of the things I'm concerned about, I learned so much from younger organizers. I can't tell you, you're so much smarter than we were in our day, and understand state violence in a way that we were just figuring out, and a lot of stuff. But But I hope also that everyone understands that this is like a long struggle. And it's not like, you know, okay, we're going to win this one and then I'm going to move on to something else in my life. And so I think that I wonder if you both feel like in your work that you're finding that there are people who understand and you're able to communicate that no matter how radical a reform or a change or a structural change we make, we're going to have to fight to have it implemented and maintained. And what does it take for people to be committed to that? You know, in RAPP, what we're finding is that the people who are in it for the long haul are a lot of people who were incarcerated or had loved ones inside. But, you know, I worry about that with sometimes when I see big groups of people and then I don't know where they go. So I wonder how you face that in your work.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to transition us a bit, if that's okay with y'all. I think that those are really, really important questions. And they are, as Sharlyn said, they are the questions. I know lots of people are grappling with those questions right now. But it made me think a bit about the amount of political education that needs to happen inside of our own organizations, inside of our own campaigns, and among the people who we'd like to organize to be able to make the case for our way of thinking and to help shift the common sense around kind of what is the appropriate response when we are faced with harm, but also when we are faced with organizing challenges. And so, you know, Sharlyn, I guess I'm thinking particularly about the toolkit, but I also am drawing from, you know, a question that somebody in the audience posed, which is for the kit. I guess I'm wondering about how you've actually seen people put those tools to work. I'm somebody who's generated lots of, you know, used to be paper and now digital files over the years. And I often wonder kind of, are those sitting on shelves or collecting dust or since in the recycling bin, or are people actually able to put them to work? So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about ways you've seen people put stuff to work. But then I'm also wondering, you know, for Nick and Laura, about how the process of bringing people along, not only on the kind of politics, yes, on the politics, but also on the mechanics of doing this work, right? So how are you doing in supporting people who may never have worked with decision makers before to understand how decisions get made or how policies get made or how laws get made? Like, what are some of the mechanics of that? And what opportunities are you finding as well as challenges in activating maybe people who are unlikely allies to this new work, people who maybe have never had access to that before, and to bring them along? So I'm sorry, that's multi-part, but I trust you all. I know you're all very smart people. So Sharlyn, let's start with you, and then Nick and Laura will move to you.
Sure. So one thing I'd say is that we've done some workshops and just had conversations using the toolkit as the basis for that. So Mohammed Sheck and from Critical Resistance and I have done a couple different workshops for people and organizations that have active campaigns, right, with the National Bail Fund Network or with people who are figuring out their demands. And I think one of the things that I have found valuable for the toolkit and that I really wanted and was part of the reason I was excited to work on it was that it writes things down and takes a position, right? It actually says, we looked at this reform and we looked at its impact and we're evaluating it as reformist, or we're evaluating this as an abolitionist step. And it's sometimes really hard to do those things publicly. And I think it's an offering of like, let's take a stand, let's try to have some generative conflict and some conversation, because that's how we grow in our analysis, and our analysis has been developing rapidly, and the proposals and what feels possible to win is developing rapidly. And so like we have to, it was a contribution to that public conversation that I've been very excited about. And it's, you know, I've found it clarifying. Like one of the reforms that we evaluate is a reform that sort of like system actors and stakeholders love, which is the New Jersey bail reform. And what it did was almost functionally eliminate money bail and move towards risk assessment tools, a very heavy reliance on risk assessment tools, and at different times, different conditions of surveillance and control, And it was really important for us to be able to sit down and wrestle with that reform and say, I think it was, I don't have the number in front of me, more than 30% fewer people in jails in New Jersey, maybe 40% fewer. It was hugely decarceral. And to say like, this is a reform that decarcerated and it's not abolitionist. This is, and to be able to say decarceration is a abolitionist strategy, but it's not every decarceral reform is abolitionist. And to really try to pick that apart, I found it illuminating, helpful. And I've been doing this, focused almost exclusively on this issue for a bunch of years. And I still was learning things and going through that process.
Nick and Laura, either of you want to talk about the process of bringing people along to get skilled up to do the work of your campaigns?
Yeah, I can jump in. A lot of it, so I can talk on like a couple different things. So thinking about our California prison, the California Prison Coalition right now, or closing California prisons, for bringing people in. Right now, it's a lot of conversations. We're looking at getting, about 100+ organizations to sign on to our letter, signing on that they, support the cause, that they want to be involved. There's a couple different levels that we have depending on, their capacity, what they can get involved with, things like that. And so we've been doing a lot of reaching out, one-on-ones, really deep conversations about, what people need in their communities, but also presenting on the campaign, presenting on the work we've already done, really diving deep into, what we're working on doing in our analysis and helping them understand where we're coming from and meeting them where they are, or just, getting them updated on what's going on, because, we have a lot of abolitionist orgs throughout California that we've been plugging in, and with Curb helping with the lead, they've got a lot of organizations in their coalition already. So right now we're really just working on, educating people about what we're doing and why we're doing it and the scope, and really getting it off the ground, because this is, going to be a multi-year campaign to roll back all of this prison boom that happened over decades. So that's one way. I mean, definitely through doing for myself, thinking the way I got into critical resistance was through the No New SF Jail Coalition fight here in San Francisco. I've been born and raised in the Bay Area, so it was really like deep to my heart, and that's how I got plugged into CR, was through them coming to a class at State. And so through that, just learning spokesperson trainings and things like that, that really helped me get to understand that's the things, and understand abolition, be able to talk about abolition, be able to talk about the campaign itself. And so we're continuing to do that with our prison closure work and through outreach. And we've got a couple different groups. I know that we're working so like Critical Resistance has a mail night that we do, and a volunteer mail crew for our Inside Outside mail program. And we're about to launch a kind of like training for them to be able to talk about the prison closure campaign for when they're doing the inside outside work. And, whenever they go anywhere now, they can talk about the work of the campaign. And then also, if I remember correctly about the question, or if I don't know if I got this from like the Q&A button, because I was looking at it, but working with, how is it posed? Non-traditional allies, thinking like, environmental work, or, healthcare workers. Like we just presented a group of healthcare workers recently. And that was just really around, showing them how the, prison industrial complex and the carceral state they can help push back against it. I know I wasn't at that conversation, but I did hear, they were like, oh, we don't have like the power ourselves to like, change policy. I'm not like the head of the hospital or things like that. But I was reframing it and telling them like, oh, but on those like daily occasions that you like would maybe have like think about calling like a sheriff or something. I'm thinking about here in San Francisco, there's been a campaign through just nurses and doctors who have been fighting to get the sheriff out of SF General, San Francisco General Hospital, and just thinking about like showing them new ways of like how to organize, or what organizing even is in their space. Because, they're very, I don't want to speak broadly, but thinking, that's not a space that you're thinking about organizing. You're thinking about healthcare. You're thinking about, you want to take care of people. So, giving them that idea of power of like you and yourself, you have the power every day to decide not to engage with the prison industrial complex, whether it be, in conversation, or like actually, deciding to de-escalate instead of just calling in a sheriff or someone. And then also through like art. I mean, creating the art that we were creating, that creates a visual language that people can understand and really start to grasp and feel and see what the prison closure campaign is about. And yeah, I think it's just, getting into these communities, starting to ask questions, and really starting to show like, the whole reason of like why we need to shut down the prison industrial complex. It's hurting the environment. It's giving us shitty jobs. It's, taking away resources from our schools and hospitals, and, other things that we could invest in, like community care centers. Like we saw like over the pandemic, like communities came together when the government didn't show up, which, they're still not showing up. Communities came together and took care of each other. People showed up for one another. So we can do this. And at the same time that we're, breaking down the PIC and breaking down like prisons in California, we also need to be thinking about building up the capacity of our communities to take care of themselves.
Great. Thank you, Nick. And as we're winding down on time here, Laura, you have anything you want to add to the mix on that?
I'm moving out to work with you, Nick. That sounds so exciting. Yeah, just quickly. I mean, it's a struggle, and we will go for a while and we'll say, wait, people are not getting what is, the long distance goal of this. And people, like we had one rally a year ago where one of our organizers said, people are transformed. They've transformed. The prisons work. They change. We was like, no, that's not. And it wasn't actually. It wasn't even what he meant. He was just getting tongue-tied. We're big on history. Jose was in the Young Lords. I was, in the 60s and 70s. And we do a lot of that, of talking about that. We do trainings about the real content of the bills and what they can and can't do. We try to be really honest about it. And we try to be really honest about the fact that there for our work, there are landmines all over, because you can fall into one where all of a sudden you are like you brought up about, risk assessments. We're very clear. The risk assessments suck. They happen to give real risk for older people who've been in prison for a long time, unlike when they're used for predictive for younger people. It's a very different thing, but we don't promote them and we're really clear about them. But it takes, given the pace of our organizing and rallies and all this, we don't get to do it enough. And we do have a support group. It's self-organized for our organizers, because this is extremely traumatic work for people. We had one of our community leaders, her husband finally did get parole, and he died on the day he was going to be released. Another person that we loved very much, finally, after 45 years, was about to get parole, excused himself from the parole hearing for a minute, asked to be excused to go to the bathroom, collapsed and had a stroke and died in the middle. So it's every 3 days, someone in the New York State system dies, and those are people connected with us. Everyone has that experience. It's not just us, but with long-termers, when people are fighting for their loved ones who have like a 75 to life or an 80 years to life sentence, meaning they don't even get a chance at parole until they're 99 years old. It's very hard. So we try to support ourselves emotionally with the concept of history, because it is knowing that there is a struggle that continues from generation to generation, right? Someone just said maroon shoats. That was another example in Pennsylvania, where a hard-won battle, which we don't have time to go into, but dotted every I to get that man out on compassionate release. It was unbelievable, and with a lot of organizing. So the last thing I would just want to say is, my dear late co-defendant Marilyn Buck used to say all the time, until we would make a joke about it, we have to have a vision. We don't win things every day. We have to have a vision. We have to believe in the vision and be motivated. And so I think that the main thing that's really good about having a really intergenerational group like we do. I mean, I'm in my 70s, Kathy's in her 70s, Jose's in his 60s. We have people in their 50s and 60s. And then we have people in their early 20s who are organizers, is that we can share the life experience that goes into making up a struggle for revolution in this country. And then we can look at what we're doing and say, okay, this isn't perfect. We're going to fight for it to be better, but we're not going to go, oh my God, this has this problem to it, and we're going to give up. So it's a very kind of organic struggle. But the last thing I will say is we do not want our organizers to be like organizers that we've seen in other campaigns where they don't really know what the bill is that they're promoting or the change that they're talking about. And that's a lot of work, but we've got to do those trainings and we do them honestly.
Thank you for that, Laura. And what you're describing takes a certain amount of discipline, takes a certain amount of rigor. And sometimes that has to be taught too, right? People might not naturally come into that. And if you're in a good, strong organization, the hope is that you're getting some of that by example, and you're also being taught that directly so that your work can be as powerful as possible. So I could go on all night with the three of you. You all are superstars, and I'm so, so, so grateful to have been in conversation with you. But I want to turn things over to Shirley Leslie, who works with Critical Resistance